The future of oil demand is shifting in ways that could surprise many, and BP's latest forecast reveals just how complex and uncertain this landscape really is. A year ago, BP aligned with the International Energy Agency, IEA, and other major analysts by predicting that global oil demand growth would peak before 2030. But now, the energy giant has revised its outlook, suggesting that oil demand will continue to rise until the mid-2030s before gradually tapering off. This change raises important questions about the pace of the energy transition and the factors shaping oil consumption worldwide. In BP's most recent Energy Outlook report, the company states, oil demand declines over the outlook, but continues to play a significant role in the global energy system over at least the next 10 to 15 years. What's driving this nuanced view? On one hand, improvements in energy efficiency and the rapid adoption of electric vehicles, EVs, are expected to reduce oil consumption. On the other hand, growing demand from the petrochemical sector, used to produce plastics and other materials, is projected to offset some of these gains, keeping oil relevant for decades to come. But here's where it gets controversial. BP highlights a worrying slowdown in energy efficiency improvements over the past 5 years. This trend could seriously impact future oil demand. If efficiency gains continue at a reduced pace, estimated at about 2% annually, BP predicts an additional 6 million barrels per day of oil demand over the next decade. This slowdown is significant because every technology has natural limits to how much it can improve efficiency. For example, while wind and solar power are increasingly replacing coal and gas in electricity generation, and vehicles are becoming more fuel efficient, these advancements may not accelerate enough to reverse the recent deceleration in efficiency improvements. Emerging economies remain the primary engines of oil and gas demand growth. China, which has historically accounted for roughly half of global oil demand growth, is now seeing its growth rate slow. Meanwhile, other Asian countries, especially India, are stepping into the spotlight as key drivers of future demand. BP's forecast suggests that by 2050, the broader Asian region will play a crucial role in shaping global oil consumption patterns. BP's outlook explores two main scenarios. The first, called the current trajectory, assumes that existing policies and trends continue without major changes. The second, known as the below 2 degrees scenario, envisions a more aggressive global push toward decarbonization, aligning with international climate goals to limit warming. Under the current trajectory, oil demand is expected to drop by about 15% from 2023 levels by 2050. In contrast, the below 2 degrees scenario predicts a dramatic 70% decline in oil demand by mid-century. In the current trajectory scenario, global crude oil demand peaks around 2035 and then remains relatively flat until 2050. With declines mainly seen in China and developed countries. The below 2 degrees scenario, however, anticipates a much faster and steeper decline after 2035. To put numbers on it, BP estimates that oil demand in 2050 will be around 85 million barrels per day under the current trajectory, but plummet to less than 35 million barrels per day if the world follows the more ambitious decarbonization path. Interestingly, both scenarios expect oil demand to be supported by increased air travel, driven by expanding global economic activity and rising living standards in developing nations. Conversely, industrial use of crude oil is projected to decline steadily through 2050. Transport sector demand is another critical piece of the puzzle. Thanks to policies aimed at reducing sales of internal combustion engine vehicles, BP forecasts a massive surge in electric vehicles. Under the current trajectory, the global EV fleet is expected to grow from 40 million in 2023 to 480 million by 2035. The below 2 degrees Celsius scenario pushes this even further, with EV numbers reaching 560 million by 2035. By 2050, these figures balloon to 1.4 billion and 2.1 billion EVs, respectively. For context, the total number of cars worldwide was estimated at about 1.475 billion in 2024, meaning EVs could dominate the roads in the coming decades. Yet, while transport demand for oil is set to decline, the petrochemicals industry tells a different story. This sector's demand for oil is rising and is expected to become the largest driver of global oil consumption, surpassing vehicles. BP notes that oil used as feedstock for petrochemicals has grown from 8 million barrels per day in 2000 to over 14 million barrels per day in 2023, accounting for roughly a quarter of total oil demand growth during that period. However, even this growth is expected to slow down within the next decade due to weakening global economic growth and reduced demand for plastics. So what does all this mean for the oil industry, including BP itself? Neither scenario paints an entirely rosy picture. The industry faces significant challenges as demand patterns shift and the world moves toward cleaner energy sources. Yet, BP candidly acknowledges that the exact future is highly uncertain, stating early in its report that the likelihood that either of the two scenarios used in this year's Energy Outlook will materialize exactly as described is negligible. This admission underscores the complexity and unpredictability of the global energy transition. Here's a question to ponder. With efficiency gains slowing and petrochemicals demand rising, is the world truly on track to reduce oil dependence as quickly as climate goals require? Or are we underestimating the stubborn resilience of oil demand? Share your thoughts. Do you agree with BP's revised outlook, or do you see a different future unfolding? The debate is wide open, and your perspective matters. By Irina Slav for oilprice.com. More talk reads from oilprice.com. Iraq to restart Kurdistan oil exports on September 27th. Brent prices retreat below $70 as OPEC Plus mulls another output hike. Standard Chartered bucks bearish trend, forecasts oil price gains in 2026.